And one issue that I've noticed upsets pretty much every single group on the progressive, regressive side of things, far left, social justice adherents, whatever you want to call them, is the concept of privilege. If you want to upset feminists, deny male privilege. If you want to upset SJWs, deny white privilege. And just prepare yourself for screeching, because you can bet your bottom dollar that it's coming. It doesn't matter how many facts or how much data you include with what you're saying or how nuanced you try to be. For some reason, denying the concept of privilege based on skin color, sex, or other immutable characteristics is almost like the progressive equivalent of drawing Muhammad. It's that taboo. And before we get into this too much, just so we're all on the same page, we're going to define privilege. And so no one can claim that I'm not using the right social justice meaning of the word, and therefore my whole argument should be ignored. Hello, commenters and video responses from my previous work on racism and oppression. I see you. Let's let Francesca Ramsey explain the term for us.
What exactly is privilege, and why does talking about it make so many people so angry? Privilege is defined as a special right or advantage available only to a particular person or group of people. In the context of social inequality, it means that some groups of people are treated better than others based on their race, gender, class, sexuality, or physical ability.
So fair enough, I think that's a workable definition for our little talk. And I would also agree that yes, everyone out there does have some sort of privilege in their lives, some benefit that they have but that they didn't work for. For example, allow me to check my own privilege for just a minute. I was born in Canada, grew up in Hong Kong, and went to university in the US, 3 wealthy nations where human rights and equality exist. I was not born in North Korea or the Sudan, and that's great. I appreciate that very much. When growing up, although my family did have our ups and downs financially, like everyone does, overall my childhood was very comfortable. I had toys and electronics and could take music lessons, dance lessons, and art lessons. Seriously, that's a huge privilege. My parents paid money, and a lot of money, so I could learn how to do things like paint with watercolors and play the flute. That has privilege written all over it. And in terms of looks, well, I mean, I think I got a pretty good role. I mean, I'm just saying, it could be worse. Oh, it's awkward. Awkward, never mind. So just to be clear with this video, I am not denying the concept of privilege in general. Yes, privilege exists. And similarly, I also want to make it clear that I am not denying the verifiable fact that some groups do better on average than other groups. Men make more than women on average. White people make more than black people on average. And Asians make more than white people on average. But that one isn't talked about as much by progressives. Strange. So are those discrepancies examples of privilege? Well, to answer that, why don't we revisit that definition one more time?
It means that some groups of people are treated better than others based on their race, gender, class, sexuality, or physical ability.
Alrighty, here we go. White people doing better on average and men doing better on average does not mean that they are privileged because they are white or because they are men. I know it's been said and parodied and joked about more times than we can all count, but being white or being a man doesn't just come with perks where people give you things you didn't earn. There is no white privilege card that you can just use to earn and redeem points at your local restaurant. And the reason why people tend to not really respond all too well when you imply or straight up say that they are privileged based on their skin color or sex is that it minimizes the amount of work they've had to do to get where they are. And I'm gonna stop right here because at this point I'm sure some of you out there are ready to say, well, did you know that black names are less likely to receive callbacks than white names? Clearly, that indicates that white people are privileged. Checkmate. Well, it is true that a widely cited 2003 experiment titled Are Emily and Greg More Employable Than Lakeisha and Jamal? A field experiment on labor market discrimination sent out identical resumes with black-sounding and white-sounding names to see if there would be any differences in the amount of callbacks each group received. After the experiment, the study concluded that, quote, job applicants with white names needed to send out about 10 resumes to get 1 callback. Those with African American names needed to send out around 15 resumes to get 1 callback. Boom! Total proof that white privilege exists. Not quite. After that study was released, its methodology did attract some criticisms. Specifically, the black names that the study used, things like Lakeisha, Latanya, or Tremaine, yeah, they're not just associated with blackness. They're also associated with a certain socioeconomic background, and people in the experiment may not have been discriminating against blackness specifically, but rather a perception about education and income levels. And this argument could also be used, by the way, for people not wanting to hire people with white names like Billy Bob or Betty May that are typically associated with Well, rednecks. Cue angry Billy Bobs and Latanyas in the comment section. What you name your kids is going to affect them for the rest of their lives, so please don't name them something weird. And like with Billy Bob, this isn't just an issue that affects black people. In university, I had a roommate named Janessa. Janessa. The poor girl, she was white as heck, but you know, that stuff's gotta be affecting her. And to anyone who thinks this is just like apologetics to defend racism or whatever, there's actually data to back this. A recent study from the University of Missouri ran a similar experiment to study racial biases in hiring processes, but this time they also included Hispanic names, and guess what? They found no statistical differences in callback rates. The difference in their experiment was that to control for perceived socioeconomic differences and to just focus on race, only race, they kept first names constant while changing the last names. Quote, the resumes from fictional black candidates bore the last names Washington and Jefferson, while those from white candidates bore Anderson and Thompson, and those from Hispanic candidates bore Hernandez and Garcia. Of course, people might complain that who says Washington and Jefferson are black last names? Maybe these people thought they were calling back white applicants. 90% of Washingtons and 75% of Jeffersons are black. Okay, I mean, people know. So yeah, it really doesn't look like people are just handing out jobs to white folks based on whiteness. Funny that. Oh wait, I can already hear you say, what about the discrepancy in prison sentencing between the races? Black people get longer sentences, and therefore, white privilege. Yes, black people do get longer prison sentences than white people on average. But the thing is, there's a lot that goes into sentencing and how the legal system works in general, and it's just complicated. Our ability to statistically determine whether black people are getting longer sentences than white people when holding constant all other values aside from race, like type of crime, criminal history, taking plea bargains, and other things, it's all dependent on researchers coding non-quantitative, qualitative characteristics for each case, which isn't easy. I'm gonna go ahead and let this literature review of these nice social scientists explain the rest for me. Link will be in the description box. A recent examination of criminal cases in the federal system finds that case characteristics that include charge seriousness and criminal history account for almost 80% of the observed racial disparity in sentence length for non-drug related offenses. However, despite the contribution of arrest offense and criminal history to explaining the bulk of the racial gap in prison sentences, blacks still appear to receive sentences that are on average 10% higher than whites. Now yes, that is still a 10% difference in sentencing averages, but before you get too excited, there is more to suggest that there isn't just rampant racism running around sending black people to prison. Quote, there are a number of reasons to suspect that case characteristics related to the current offense and criminal history are weighed differently for black and white defendants by the criminal justice system during the adjudication process. Blacks are more likely to live in urban counties where courts may be less sympathetic to mistakes due to assembly line justice and anonymity between prosecutors and defendants. Blacks may also have a lower quality of counsel, which could lead to a greater willingness to plead guilty and a greater likelihood of being incarcerated. There is also some evidence indicating that blacks are less likely than whites to plead guilty, which typically leads to more severe sentences. Ah, social sciences, you thrilling and mysterious mistress, you. If there's one takeaway that I want people to leave this video with, it's that yes, privilege exists, but it's not as simple as looking at someone's race or gender and knowing, yep, you're privileged. And what I've noticed about conversations surrounding privilege is that it's really common for people to tell others, how can you deny you have privilege when you've never had to experience life as a woman / black person / Latinx person / non-binary individual, And the thing that's frustrating is that the people saying this don't see the irony of it. None of us, not a single one of us, know what it's like to live life as another person. You don't know what it's like to live life being me, and I don't know what it's like to live life being you. So how about this? None of us make assumptions about what privilege other people or other groups may or may not have. Because at the end of the day, everyone has a different background and everyone has different challenges they've had to overcome. I believe that's called intersectionality. Now there is a lot more that could be said about privilege, and if you guys would like to see a part 2 to this video, let me know in the comments.